evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is good to see you on this beautiful, pleasant Wednesday night. Anybody else by chance a little bit tired today? Yes, that's probably the wrong thing to say just before we launch into a seminar, but great to have you with us. And this evening in our ongoing series on learning to see, we are blessed to have Bridget with us. And I know that some of you, particularly from the church here, would know her. She's been working with MCC for, is it that long? I was thinking like 11. So 29 years, that's amazing. Building friendships, particularly with our Indigenous neighbors. And so thanks for that. Welcome here. This is a great group of people, and they're going to have some fantastic questions for you as this goes. So I'll let you introduce yourself any more that you wish, and I know you have an intern here with you as well, so that's fantastic. So welcome everybody. I know we're going to have a great evening.
I should fix this back. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being here and for making time and space for this session. I want to start with an opening prayer. Creator God, we come into this space aware that we stand on land we did not first know. Among stories we're still learning to hear. Give us the courage to see clearly where we have been comfortable, where we have been silent, and where relationships are calling us deeper. Help us listen with humility, to hold one another with care, and to remain open to being changed. May this time not just inform us, but transform how we walk in relationship with one another and with you. Amen. So I'm going to start with a confession. Ed gave me plenty of time to put this workshop together, but I am always very busy and I tend to wait to the last minute. So I put this together over the long weekend and have only practiced it twice. And so I am going to be dependent on my script because I just don't want to leave anything out, and I want to make sure that I cover everything properly. So I won't call you guinea pigs, but you are kind of my test group. And so you can let me know. I'll appreciate to hear your feedback on what worked well, what didn't, and where I might need to make changes. So. And also before I begin, I want to introduce my summer intern, Olivia Woltz. Olivia, stand up, please. So she'll be helping me for the next 9 weeks in the program, 4 days a week. So lots of help. And I'm thankful to God for her as well. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Stalo peoples who have been here since time immemorial. I name this not as a formality, but as a reminder that relationship to land and to people exists, whether we acknowledge it or not. As Ed said, my name's Bridget, and I work at MCC BC as the Indigenous Neighbors Program Coordinator. I mentioned I've been there a long time, but I've been doing this work since 2015, so basically over the past 10 plus years. And much of my work and my heart is grounded in building and supporting relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. I was born in the United States, and on my father's side, I am Creek Native American and French. On my mother's side, I'm a mix of a few different European nations. So I do have a little bit of Indigenous heritage, not that I grew up knowing very much about it, unfortunately. I also want to say right at the beginning that this is not a space where you need to have the right answers. It's not even about becoming knowledgeable. This is a space about posture, about how to see and how we approach one another. So this evening I want to give you a different kind of seeing, one that involves honesty, humility, and relationships. And I want to begin by grounding us in something we already share in common, our faith. As your church named, Jesus is at the center of your vision. So tonight, I want to keep that at the center as well. Because when we walk and talk about inclusion, relationships, and reconciliation, they're not just social ideas. They are actually spiritual practices. There's a line in the gospel where Jesus says, let anyone with ears to hear listen. And I don't think that's about physical hearing. It's about posture, about whether we are willing to be open to listen and to truly see what's in front of us. And that's what tonight is about. Inclusion is not just something we achieve. It's something we practice. And it's practice in how we listen, respond, and relate to one another. One of the challenges in Indigenous relationships is that many of us have learned to see incompletely. It's not intentional, but it is consistent in how we see. There are a few things that show up when we look at that. Indigenous people are often treated as if we belong to the past, something in history books, rather than present-day relationships. There's a tendency to group all Indigenous people together, as if they're not distinct nations, distinct cultures, and different lived realities. Politeness takes over, and instead of engaging honestly, we hold back out of fear of saying the wrong thing. And often, with the best of intentions present, there's still harm that happens. So intentions don't always prevent harm. So I'll say that one more time. Good intentions do not cancel the impact that often harms Indigenous people. And this is something we see reflected in Scripture as well. Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. So this isn't what we mean to do. It's about how we respond once we begin to see clearly. A very common story that I grew up learning, and I'm sure you did too, was about the Good Samaritan. And what stands out for me is not just who helps, but who doesn't help. The people who passed by may not have seen themselves as doing harm. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But if we take that to a contemporary example today, we see somebody that needs help, we may not stop. And maybe we have good reasons. Our family's waiting for us to get home, and I don't have time to stop. I have responsibilities. I'm headed to work and I need to get there on time. Or I have good intentions. When I get home or to work or wherever I'm going, I'll send someone to help. But I didn't stop. And Jesus asks, which of these was a neighbor? I think the question invites us to ask the question, when we begin to see clearly Indigenous people, what does love require of us? I want to invite you into a brief moment of quiet. Just think for a moment to yourself and notice where you may feel uncertain, hesitant, or silent when it comes to Indigenous relationships. I'm going to take a minute here and just think about it. Where do you feel uncertain? What things are you hesitating about? Okay. I want to shift now to ideas of lived experiences. I'm going to share some stories with you. And I want to say clearly what I'm sharing is an Indigenous perspective. It's not the Indigenous perspective. Because again, they're a diverse group of people and they have many different perspectives. But this is an Indigenous perspective that I've learned and through my examples. And so before I begin to share the stories, I also want to say, as Christians, we believe in God who became flesh. Jesus who entered into the human experience. So truth is not just abstract, it is lived, embodied, and relational. And so that's what I want to share with you in these stories. The first story is called Misseeing. So I want to start with a moment of misseeing. I remember when an Indigenous friend and I were at a learning session, and after the learning session, we gathered chatting with a few people. And one of the people there was talking about Indigenous peoples as if they were only part of history. They were describing what life used to be like for Indigenous people. They were using past tense, as though Indigenous people weren't still here, still present, still living full and complex lives today. And we were standing right there with them.
Ouch.
The woman wasn't trying to be unkind. There was no intention to exclude or dismiss us on her part. But in that moment, my friend felt like she wasn't fully seen. And honestly, I felt that way too. Not because we weren't there, but because the understanding of who Indigenous people are was incomplete. And I think that is something that happens more often than we realize. Not through hostility, but through habits of thinking. Things we've learned without even noticing. Biases we've come to believe without even questioning them. And that's part of what we're talking about. How easy is it to missee without meaning to? That story highlights that invisibility factor that Indigenous people experience, past versus present. Also, an example of harm without intent. The second story I want to share is about respect. So this is sharing a different kind of experience, one that felt respectful. I'm working with a MC church, not this one, a different one, that has been learning about reconciliation and Indigenous relationships over a few years now. I talked with them about sharing a documentary called Common Territory and having a panel discussion after the film. Instead of asking a lot of questions or trying to figure out the best way to do this, the right way, they slowed down. They listened to me share about different ways that they could do this well. They were respectful to me, and the result was respectful, and I want to share that result with you. The church pastor decided to do this as a Sunday morning service. The Indigenous couple that was in the film was coming all the way from Stahelis Nation to Richmond. Long drive. The couple decided to stay the night before in a hotel located near the church, instead of driving 2 hours on Sunday morning. And upon finding out, the pastor immediately offered to pay for their stay, which they didn't expect. What followed that morning was a beautifully indigenized church service, with the pastor reading from the First Nations version of the New Testament, followed by worship songs only written by Indigenous people, including English and Indigenous languages within the songs. And And then, following the film, was this extremely respectful panel discussion that happened. The Indigenous couple were in tears during the service. They felt so honored and respected. They don't attend church, but that kind of church, they said they would attend. Now they've requested that church to come to Stehalis and put that service on for them and their people. Busy planning the date for that. But if you didn't know better, you would have thought this was their regular church service. It felt very normal. They didn't make a big deal out of doing things a bit differently that morning. And one church member who has attended many of the learning sessions and book studies I offer said to me a statement that really stuck with me. She said, "Bridget, I think I'm becoming to realize that reconciliation is a lived experience. Ongoing conversations that challenge my assumptions and build understanding. It's about learning and also putting things into practice." That may seem like a small thing, but that statement mattered a great deal to me, because in that moment, I didn't feel like I had to educate or defend or carry the conversation for that church. The light bulbs were going on. They were getting it. And that's what respect often looks like. It's not dramatic or performative. It's quiet. It's consistent. It's relational. And over time, that's what builds trust. For them to trust us. For us to trust them. The third story is about responsibility and repair. So I humbly share this experience. There are moments when intention and impact don't match. I remember a situation where I was in charge of an Indigenous event that I was putting on, and I was trying to do things in a good way. I did something that I thought was okay and showed respect. But what I said and did was actually based on a misunderstanding, and it didn't land well. I didn't realize I had done something wrong. And what mattered most wasn't the mistake, it was what I did next. When she confronted me, I tried to explain it away. I offered excuses, and I'm sure my tone was defensive. I eventually apologized, and the woman that I upset said, "I don't accept your apology. You've been doing this work for several years, and there's no excuse for you making this mistake." I was heartbroken. I should have just listened and not made any excuses for my mistake. I should have taken responsibility for my mistake and owned it. I let a couple of weeks pass, but I had such a heavy heart. I decided to write the woman a letter, and I sent the letter along with a gift. In the letter, I included a statement saying, "I want to do better. If you're willing, I'd like to keep learning." There was no defensiveness in my letter, no minimizing what I had done, and no trying to make myself feel better about it. Just ownership, and a willingness to stay in relationship with her. Another week passed, and she came into the office. They buzzed me and said she was up front, walking up front with fear and trepidation. She came in to say how much she appreciated the letter and the gift. And she said, "I was forgiven completely." Wow, what a statement. I saw her yesterday in the cafe with her and her husband. And Livia and I joined them for lunch and sat down and chatting away about their family. They were sharing with me. And I told her I was working on this workshop. And I said, I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to use as an example the mistake I made with you. And she said, "Oh, that was so long ago, I don't even remember."
That's great.
Now, it was only in 2022, so it wasn't that long ago. But That's what she meant by I was completely forgiven. It doesn't even cross her mind when she sees me. And I think that's an amazing thing. So, mistakes will happen in this work. What builds a relationship is not avoiding them completely, but how we respond when they happen. Because repair is where trust begins to grow. That couple trusts me now. We need to be learning how to respond in ways that restore a relationship rather than protect ourselves or let fear drive what we do or don't do in statements we say. So what I'm highlighting in this story is that intention doesn't match impact often, and repair versus defensiveness is a big thing to think about, and that accountability builds trust. And in our faith, we see that pattern again and again, that acknowledging harm and seeking restoration is part of how we're made whole. These stories are different, but they point to the same thing. Indigenous relationships are shaped on how we see, how we listen, and how we respond over time. What I'm hoping you are hearing that is Indigenous relationships are not about programs or events. They're not about showing up one time for National Indigenous Peoples Day, but to show up in real ways that really matter. And with that, I'm going to add a very personal added story that I wasn't sure I was going to share or not. But my daughter passed away on December 28th, 2024. So very fresh, 30 years old, and very difficult. Her memorial service was on January 18th. And I think through work and church, the news spread, and I expected 30, 40 people, maybe 50. A good number of people showed up, including 6 Indigenous people. I was shocked. They didn't know my daughter at all. And so they sat through the service and they joined us downstairs when we had food and we had a mic for people to share about memories. And there was a little bit of a lull after a number of people shared. And one Indigenous woman got up and she said, I never met Bridget's daughter. I'm here for Bridget. And she said, I don't want to get choked up, I want to do this right. She said, I wish I'd known her, but I actually feel like I met her today. As stories were shared and pictures were shared, I felt like I met Shelby. And she said, I thank you for that. That meant so much to me. Now, I want to divide you up into small groups of 3 to 4 people so you can just kind of turn your chairs around and connect with each other. And we're going to take about 15 minutes to do this part. Please remember the verse, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. As you share, listen more than you speak. Stay curious and resist the urge to correct or debate anything anybody says. These are the 3 questions I want you to talk about. What stood out emotionally? Where did you feel discomfort? What does respect look like beyond politeness? I just shared a number of stories with you, and I would like you to kind of think about those 3 questions. So just among yourself, we'll take 15 minutes for this, 15 to 20, and then we'll come back together. So, there you go. Okay, I'm just gonna, we're not gonna take a long time for feedback from groups, but is one person willing to share what stood out emotionally to you?
Your story, the last one. I mean, it's the vulnerability, I think, is always makes it a little bit more emotional. Oh, it's okay. I've said it.
Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't sure if I was gonna share it or not, but. One person, where did you feel any discomfort? Anybody feel discomfort? I mean, maybe not even in the stories, but maybe even just in experiences with Indigenous people. Have you ever felt any discomfort?
We talked about the discomfort we feel with other white people when they speak poorly of Indigenous people. And we spoke about not having a lot of Indigenous people in our sphere, sadly.
Did you talk about how you respond to those people who talk
Yes.
poorly?
We had quite a few answers, but we can't share them.
Did you share them with them?
We try it honest.
Yeah.
Online that explodes.
Yeah.
But in person, it can go better.
Yeah, it's being recorded, so you must speak in.
Speaking to someone who thinks poorly of Indigenous people, goes better in person than it does online.
Yes.
And encouraging curiosity, like you like try reading this, or have you heard of generational trauma? Like how have you learned that it even affects the DNA? Like, what do you mean it should be over? It's not like.
Thank you. And the last one, what does respect look like beyond politeness? How do you show respect? Beyond just being polite?
I think respect means that we really intentionally go out and learn more about what's going on and recognize where we, as white privileged people, need to take responsibility to make changes and not expect them to do it.
Yeah. This group actually that I joined had a good answer. I don't know if you remember it, but you talked about asking what they want, asking what they need. Like not assuming we know, right? Okay, thank you for those conversations. I want to connect it back to inclusion, the topic that I'm supposed to be talking about. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. This verse really shapes my work, but I think it also shapes the work we're called to do as Christians. Inclusion is not invitation alone, representation alone, or occasional engagement. Inclusion means being willing to be changed through relationship. Inclusion within a faith community requires practicing postures. I keep using that word, but the posture of humility. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers and choosing to listen, to learn, and remain open to being changed by the relationship. I have been changed immensely by the relationships I have. I never expected it, but I was open to embrace it. The posture of consistency means showing up over time, beyond moments or events, to build trust through ongoing, reliable presence in relationship. MCBC, Indigenous Relations Task Group, has just provided funding for several projects. One is helping a girl get her post-secondary education at a school in Vancouver. And she just needed it because she wanted to start right away, but she didn't have the funding. And so they helped out with the registration fees and the first 4 months of tuition. In the meantime, we helped her with her band application, and she's now been approved for band funding that's going to pay for the rest of it. So
Beautiful.
that's really great. They provided funding for an elementary school. We may think, what? McCammon Elementary School had a concert. It's a school in Chilliwack. And they were working with the Good Medicine Songs group, which is led by Elder Eddie Gardner. And they sang songs in Halkomelem and English, but they also introduced the meaning of the songs, what they were about. These little children, just so precious. The funding paid for the recording of the concert, and now that will be online, and it will be broken into segments, and you can all the Halkomelems translated into English, and you can learn. It's a learning tool now that's been developed. MCBC provided funding to the Kokolitsa Elder Center. It's a new center that they were on Stalo Nation land before Stalo Nation was actually there. And as Stalo Nation built and became a fairly large organization, they were asked to leave. And so they left for a number of years, but they have now been able to move back onto that land and purchase modular units that will be a cultural education center. It's where their elders can come and have lunch every week. It's where they'll have cultural workshops. It's where they're digitizing all of their archived materials, recordings of stories by elders, all being digitized to preserve their history. Just amazing amount of work and workshops they plan to do, helping to bring back their culture, but also open and willing to allow non-Indigenous people to attend some of these workshops and learn. Great relationship building. And lastly, they're funding a greenhouse with the Residential School Thrivers Society, and just needing some startup money for seed and soil and irrigation system for the greenhouse, and so that they can grow plants and vegetables and fruit for their elders, and they can teach their young people about traditional plants. And they will also be willing to have non-Indigenous people come and garden with them in the greenhouse and to teach them about traditional plants. Again, great opportunity for growing relationships along with those plants. Posture of reciprocity means approaching relationships as mutual and respectful, transformational, both ways. We're both give and receive rather than expecting, learning to flow only one way, or for one group to retain power over the other. An equal, looking at each other on an equal level, reciprocity, the giving of gifts, giving of time, and the recognizing the gifts the Creator has given to us. The posture of responsibility means responding to what we learn with honesty and action, especially when it's uncomfortable, and staying engaged rather than stepping back. I've been in a number of uncomfortable situations. You heard one of them, only one of them tonight. But I've stayed in those relationships, and those relationships have blossomed and grown and deepened over time. Reconciliation is not something Indigenous people need you to lead. It's not something they need to lead. It's something that we need to work together on and accept responsibility to take part in, and to do so with integrity. Okay, I want to close with another quiet reflection here. Transformation comes through relationship, not performance. So take a moment to ask yourself, take 1 minute of silence and think, what is one thing I want to unlearn? What is one posture I want to practice? And what is one relationship I want to honor? Okay, as we finish, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Learning to see differently is transformation. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not perfect. It's definitely something that doesn't happen in one evening, but it's over time. Every step we take towards curiosity, clarity, every moment we choose respect matters. Following Jesus has always meant learning to see differently. And when we begin to see clearly with humility, honesty, and respect, that changes how we show up in relationship. That is the relationship Indigenous people are hoping for, are yearning for. A closing prayer. God of relationship, thank you for the honesty we've shared here tonight, for the courage to listen and the willingness to reflect. As we leave, keep shaping how we see. When we are uncertain, give us humility. When we are uncomfortable, give us courage. When we're tempted to step back, give us the strength to stay engaged. Teach us to walk in ways that honor relationship, not perfectly, but faithfully. Let what we have begun here continue in our conversations, in our communities, in our church, and in the choices we make as individuals. Amen. Thank you for being willing to step into this work this evening. But now I'll take questions. I think we still have a little bit of time left, right? Or are we over time?
Nope, 8:30.
8:30? Okay, there we go. Ask the questions you're scared to ask or you're afraid to ask. Or that you've heard ask.
Thank you very much. I know you're working in Mennonite denominations. Are you having any success in other Protestant or Catholic denominations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done blanket exercises for a couple of Alliance churches. I have been in a couple of Catholic churches at a Catholic school. I have done extensive work with Abbey Christian School, which represents a variety of, I think, faiths, as well as MEI. Credo Christian School, a very Dutch school in Langley. I also have worked with a lot of nonprofits. And in doing that, we realized that they might be a Christian nonprofit, but the number of different faith backgrounds or denominations represented there, connects me to a lot of different groups. So yeah, totally have seen this work grow and expand in many ways, as well as non-Christian organizations. Worked with Fraser Health nursing team, worked with a team of some doctors in Vancouver, as well as School District 34 Abbotsford teachers, a variety of groups. So it definitely, the city, I was asked to do an Indigenous 101 presentation for Abbey Access, which is Abbotsford City staff as well as all the service providers in Abbotsford. 100 people registered. Thankfully, only 80 showed up, but still 80 was a pretty big group. And now they've invited me back on June 17th to do the blanket exercise. I'm really hoping I don't have 80.
That's true.
So.
You asked for feedback on your presentation, so I just want to start with that your vulnerable sharing of a time where you felt you got it wrong, to hear that from you was such a gift to me, and I'm sure others here as well. So thank you for the stories that you shared. It was a great presentation. So my question is about churches here in Abbotsford that you feel have made a significant relationship building attempt with Indigenous people in this community. I loved your story about Peace Church and what happened there. Any stories from here that we as churches can learn from?
There's one church that they did a workshop on the calls to action, the 94 calls to action. And they read, I thought it might be kind of dry and boring, but they did it in a great way. They had assigned readers for each section, and we read through the 94 calls. And then there was then a sharing circle kind of discussion time. Mm-hmm. And after that, they had people adopt a call for a 1-year period. And adopting the call meant learning about it, maybe doing something about it if you can, if it's in your realm of power to do something about it. It might be just writing letters about it, to advocate for something. It might be something you could implement in your workplace, who knows, but looking at those calls to action and what you could relate to. And I know like 34 calls got adopted that night. And we had a meeting 1 year later and invited those people back. And we only had, I think we had 16 people come back. But I was amazed when they reported on what they had done. Like the learning they dug into, the letters they wrote, the talks, the conversations they had with Indigenous people, but also with leaders, implementing something in a school, in a workplace. Like, I was thinking, yeah, this is how it's small steps, but it's how we can get things done, right? So,
yeah, thank you, Bridget. I had shared here in our small little discussion here, and then you did approach that in some of your final comments. The term reciprocity I struggle with, because reciprocity, I can only take responsibility for myself to move in a way. I cannot force other people. So that's what I'm really working on and trying to understand what is reciprocity. Then the whole thing between relationship, we build relationship. I shared with our small group here is, as you know, I've had some cross-cultural experience, and I've talked to people who spent decades, and this is in Haiti, and they said to me that they did not have one Haitian friend. Lots of relationships. And then it's what is the definition of a friend, what's a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So it's terminology that I'm struggling with. But that reciprocity, I'm hearing you say we have to be open, posturing toward that. But we can't expect the other side to move our way,
yeah. Yeah, sometimes people have asked me, like, what do I do if they don't want to be friends, if they don't want a relationship? And they are growing and learning, and they are actually working at even decolonizing their lives. Today I had an Indigenous woman, and she was sharing with me, a good friend of mine, and she was sharing about how, maybe in non-Indigenous communities there's lots of slang language used, to describe Indigenous people that are not kind words, but that happens among their community. So if they are somebody who works in a white organization, but they're Indigenous, they get harassed by some of their own people, right? Kind of like, oh, you're a token Indian, or oh, you're a city Indian, you're not part of a community, that kind of thing, right? So they I think they're struggling with many of the same things we are, and when I talk about reciprocity, it's being open, looking for that opportunity to meet, find somebody who actually is open to building a relationship with you. I mean, I could I guess I could show up at your house and say I want to be your best friend, but you don't have to return that, right? And so I think we all look for that human connection to each other, you know, and I do think many Indigenous people really do desire to have a connection with non-Indigenous people and have good relationships. They know that we have to live together in a good way, that we have to live in peace together, and they want to know how to do that as well. And so sometimes it's modeling it even for them. But I attend a lot of events, I get invited to a lot of different activities, and I see that happening between people, and I see it sometimes shutting down between people. I was invited last week to a workshop at Twasin First Nation. That's a bit of a drive.
Yeah.
And it started at, it was a workshop that started at 7 o'clock and was going to go till 9. I knew I wasn't going to get home till really late, and I worked a full day. I was like, oh my goodness. But I was invited by an Indigenous friend, and it was important to her that I came. So I went, and I was there. And a couple of other MCBC people showed up there too, that she invited. It was a session for doctors, for the BC Physicians Association. They're all casual in jeans and sweatshirts. I was like, these don't look like doctors, but but they were, as it's shared. And we did a really great interactive exercise that I've never done before. And I was saying to her, oh, that was really great. And she said, I can facilitate that. I said, oh, maybe you can do that in the Fraser Valley. And she said, only if you do it with me. And so that is that relationship. That's the reciprocity part. But, it didn't happen overnight. It took time. And that's what I was talking about, taking time. Really being able to see, for them to see you time and time again in their community, at their events, talking, chatting with them. There's an Indigenous woman downstairs today that I went downstairs. She was in a quilting shop, and she was buying quilt stuff she was having a wedding. And so she's buying gifts for the people who are going to cook for her wedding, and gifts for different people who are going to do different things. And she said, oh, it's going to bring you, I want you to come to my wedding too. And so, hopefully I'm going to be able to do it. She was raving over this one apron, and was hesitating because she already had a stack of stuff to buy, And I looked at it, it was $40. And I said, can I buy that for you? Why? It's my wedding present to you. She said, I love that. She said, every time that I wear that apron, I'm going to think about you, And a culture quickly said, well, an apron is a hug from somebody. So, I guess I'm hugging her a lot. But I think it's about, taking the time to build relationships. And I realize I have more opportunities, probably, with the position that I'm in, to do that. But I've also done it on weekends and taken time out of my personal life to do it, because I know in my heart how important it is. And I want to have integrity, to be recognized as somebody who does what I preach, I guess, follows through on my words and actions. So.
Thanks. Bridget, this has been really rich, and I also just want to personally say a big thank you. I would have one practical question that's just kind of going through my mind right now. Those of us who are part of Emmanuel Church, we all know that we're having, this might be new to you, but we're having conversations with this organization called Highland about potentially doing some land development here on this site. And this is just kind of in the last couple of days, it's all of a sudden crossed my mind to say, we do a land acknowledgement on a regular basis, What do we even need to think about? Or do we just move on our merry way and do a project? Or is there anything related to the land and related to First Peoples that we need to be thinking about as we entertain or even move in a direction of doing something on this site? Have any suggestions relating to that?
I do. I work a lot with More Than a Roof, which is a housing organization, nonprofit, and I've helped guide them on some things. They acquire property that, we're in an apartment building, or that they're gonna build some housing project, and for a group, and we talked about writing letters to the chief and council of the land, informing them that this is our plans, and that we really want to honor this land and use it in a good way, describing how the land will be used, and just informing them. Also, if there is anything they need to be aware of about the land, to please let them know, or if they have any concerns, and they've gotten really good response. They've also are working at developing land acknowledgements for each of their housing projects and buildings. They have a statement that's overall because they're in BC, but they are thinking that it would be really good to have one at each place. Now, to do that, you shouldn't, I won't say you shouldn't, it's best to not do a land acknowledgement unless you're really wanting and desiring relationship with Indigenous people. And so, if you have one, you want to recognize that relationship. But if you don't have one, you at least want to express the desire to have one. And so, that takes time. If you've got lots of projects in lots of places, you got a lot of nations to connect with and let them know you're there. And then they talked about landscaping, like what kinds of things could they do to enhance the land, and even Meadow Place is looking at a building project as well, and they're talking about similar kinds of things. Maybe they want to have an Indigenous garden, traditional garden. Maybe they want to have space for elders to be able to come. So what can it look like? And as you're doing this work, how could you incorporate? Certainly, they would love for you to actually purchase some of their Indigenous artwork. I have a beautiful picture on my phone, but I can't show it to you on the screen. Today at MCC, our land acknowledgement plaque arrived. It's on a piece of live edge wood. It's burnt into it. It's big. It's gonna go up on our wall. I'm so excited because I've been trying to get this done for over 2 years. I've just ran into different stumbling blocks along the way, but I finally have it. And so that will be able to be up on our wall by National Indigenous Peoples Day. So, yay, something accomplished. I would just, put some thought into it, but I would say it's important, and sometimes sending a letter works, and sometimes letters are ignored. So I often have written a card or a letter, or written a letter and put it in a card, along with a gift, a plant or some chocolates or something, and taken it and dropped it off at the band office. I've gotten great response from that approach. In fact, Chief Silver called me and he said, "You've been trying to meet with me. I know I've had emails for at least, a couple of years." This was meant several years ago. And he said, "You brought those chocolates by, we shared them, we all enjoyed them." And he said, "I want to have breakfast with you now." And we ended up having a 3-hour breakfast and becoming what I feel like is really good friends, because all through COVID, he kept calling me. "How you doing, Bridget? You okay?" Checking on me. And I'm just like, "You're such a sweet chief." So, that's what I would do, if that's helpful.
Regarding land acknowledgements, I heard somewhere that it's it's not really that smart to use the word unceded, to just say, we are meeting on the land of. Well, hey, speak freely.
Yeah, it's important to use the term unceded. Unceded acknowledges, and some people don't like the term because they don't really know what it means.
Okay.
Okay, and so it means, I mean, a lot of people, and I've even said it means stolen land, but that's not really what the term means. It means not surrendered
Okay.
land. And so it means it wasn't sold to to the white people. It wasn't bargained for trade. There wasn't a war where they won it. Like there was no agreement put in place. It was not surrendered land is the actual correct kind of terminology to use. And land acknowledgements are an ancient tradition. It's not something the TRC came up with, which is what a lot of people think. But it is an ancient tradition done between First Nations groups as they came upon another nation's territory. They would ask for permission to enter it, but they would acknowledge the land is those people's land, and they wanted to enter it in a good way. And so really, this is a very ancient tradition, and it's something done between their communities. And so they find when it's done right, that it's very respectful. And so, but they also find when it's not done right, that it's very disrespectful. So. If you have questions that you don't want to ask in a public setting, you can always call me. I have coffee often with people down in the cafe, and we chat about things that are difficult topics, and I am always open to that. And so there's not much that I steer clear of when it comes to questions and topics around Indigenous people. So.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah.